welcome to the Fuck Therapy podcast. I am super pumped to have you here. Chanelle, I saw and came across one of your posts that jumped out at me. And it was one of your posts where you were just being vulnerable, you were being honest, you were being real, you were just basically telling the world, this is who I am and I'm okay with it. And if you've got a problem with that, bad luck. You know, it's a you problem, not a me problem. And I found that so inspiring. It's what I try and teach people because I think this is where true power is. So welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jamie. I'm very excited to be here. And it means a lot to me that, you received my story in the way that I intended.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the power of authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
It just was. So people just get to know a little bit about you. Share a bit of your story. I don't care where you start. Let's just pick up some stuff, run us through a bit of a journey, a little bit of a story, and then we'll just dig into different bits and pieces.
Okay. I think I'll just speak a little bit on the last 3 years and what that's looked like for me. So recently I've moved to Utah and I'm originally from Arizona. I'm coming up on 3 years of complete sobriety, which is just a huge accomplishment for me. And choosing to move to Utah was so that I could be closer to a sister who I consider a best friend, and also be closer to an aunt who's sort of taken on the role of like a mom. And while I still have family that I love in Arizona, I just feel that I'm able to connect better with the family I have here. So that's been really special to have that. So many massive life changes in the last 3 years. One being, I guess, sort of a career change. And I'll go ahead and jump into that right away. It's leaving OnlyFans. And so I used to make money doing OnlyFans, and that was for over probably about 4 years. And I did really well with that. And it took a lot of courage, and it was a big change to sort of leave that industry. And
so what was the biggest, like you say, it took courage to leave. What did it take to get into it?
I love the way you asked that question. I love that. What did it take for me to get into it? And the courage. Honestly, the first thing that comes to mind is, and I know this might sound really sad, but it was a huge act of just self-betrayal. It took shoving my discomfort down. So I don't know, there is a component of courage, but because I had to decide that I wasn't going to care what anyone thought, that I wasn't going to care how it affected maybe my ability to have a healthy relationship, like how it was going to affect just my love life, maybe in the future or currently, or how it was going to affect my future altogether. But in trying to convince myself of these things were like small acts of self-betrayal, because I don't believe that any of that was really, looking back on it, hindsight, that was true, that I actually didn't care what people thought, that actually was an act of embracing my sexuality. I just had to abandon myself little by little by little, and I just lost myself completely over time. And that takes us to the part of my journey over the last 3 years where I finally decided that enough was enough.
I think it's we'll dig into all this in a bit more detail, but I think it's incredible when you start digging into the nuances of those sorts of things. And I often say to people, in order for that story that you just told me to be true, right, what did you need to believe about yourself? Right? And that's what you're challenging in that description. So I think it's beautiful to go there to understand, but also to help place in driving forward. It's like, where was I and what did I have to believe about myself? Because when I say that I don't care what people think and so forth, what am I actually saying? What do I have to believe is true for that statement to be true? And then all of a sudden it's kind of like, and instead of thinking it, you say it, because when we think, it never sounds as bad to when we say it out loud. When we say it out loud, you're like, no, that's bullshit. That does not make sense. So we can dig further into that, but I really do appreciate you just tapping into that. I think it's beautiful. So you got into that industry, hugely successful, looking at it saying, okay, without digging into it too much, we're looking saying, where am I? Who am I? Right? And we've got to that point. Was there something like a smack in the face that got to you at that point, or do you mind sharing what that was?
Yeah. So a big part of um, my journey was the component of addiction, and then working in the OnlyFans industry. Those just like, it was like fuel to the fire. They just went hand in hand, because the more shame I felt about how I was making money, and by the way, that's a huge part of it too. It was also that I was at the time desperate to take care of myself financially. But um, I was just saying that, yeah, it was like the more that shame grew, the more I turned to substances, because that was the only way I knew how to cope. And so it just worsened my addictions. And so the smack in the face was hitting my bottom, where I said, okay, I'm done digging. Um, the pain of remaining the same outweighed of whatever pain would come with change, right? And so, yeah, well, people, I know it's a common phrase, but people, when they ask me, how are you able to change, like at what point did you feel like you could change, or why did you, how did you, it was that statement that became so true for me. It was just exactly where I was at. It was like just so painful that I don't know how this is, because I was so scared. I don't know how it's going to look to really try to get sober, but it can't be worse than this. And my only way out at this point is through. So the smack in the face was hitting a bottom that manifested itself in physical discomforts.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was it was literally Christmas Day that I got COVID. And for whatever reason, around that, I don't know if it was already existing injuries that I had, and it just kind of brought them to the surface. But all of a sudden, I was having chronic back pain. I had a spinal injury, and I just think so much inflammation in my body. And then I also got a ton of discomfort that I was more gut related, I believe.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that was the beginning of having to slow down long enough to where I could actually sit with myself in reality, because it forced me to. Because on top of the way I was before, it was go, 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 go. I never slowed down long enough for reality to catch up to me. I just just going all the time. Yeah, I just couldn't sit still.
Just on that, I wrote a book on narcissism. And the purpose of writing the book on narcissism was to try and give a different perspective on narcissism, and to rewrite certain different definitions so it's more pitched to the person that has suffered from narcissism, as opposed to for the narcissist. Because I think a lot of the diagnosis that we read and a lot of the definitions are more clinically based and have no reference to the person that suffered. So I rewrote them. But anyway, in that process, I worked with someone that works in alcohol recovery and drug recovery and those sorts of things. And his analogy is that the substance of addiction is your narcissist, because the reality is you become in relationship with the substance. You break relationship with self through a host of different acts, right? You end up in relationship with the substance, and the substance is your narcissist.
Yeah. Yeah. It literally becomes, yeah, I've never heard that before. And I really, really like that analogy. It starts running your life. It becomes the show.
100%. It gaslights you. It love bombs you. It triangulates you. It isolates you. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I really like that perspective. The way you explain that. That's
And
spot on.
I think this is another good analogy where I tell people, like, how did I get to rock bottom? Like, you look at rock bottom and how did I go from this beautiful, space here, or from whatever space that was originally, to where I am now? And I go, what I want you to imagine is we're going straight to the toilet here. You got a brand new roll of toilet paper, right? Piss off the first sheet because that is just annoying the way they stick it to the rest of the roll and you usually lose, right? We've got rid of that. Now we're just looking at a brand new roll of toilet paper, all neat. And we're just looking at it directly, like we can see through the cardboard and all that. We just look at it and just stare at it for 10 minutes, right? And trust me, you only need to stare at it for 1 second. And then I say, remove one sheet. Tear one sheet off and put it down beside you. Make it neat again. Look at it. Does it look any different?
Yeah.
Not at all, right?
Mm.
Yet there's a sheet removed. And the next day, we just remove one sheet.
Oh,
And we don't notice.
yeah. It just reminds me so much of just abandoning myself just a little bit, little by little.
Just a little by little. And all of a sudden, you're sitting there on this rock going, I know I didn't buy a cardboard roll, right? Yeah.
I love that. That's so funny. I really like that.
Because that's how it happens. It's like people try and go,
Yeah.
what didn't you do? You know, because they don't have a reference point of addiction or they don't have a reference point of suffering from abuse. And you have a look at it, you go, your addiction wasn't an addiction to a substance as much as it was a relationship with the substance. And the relationship was created to fill a void of personal separation. It's like the more I betray myself, the more I need a relation. And I've created it over here because it is now absent. And every step I take away from self, from me, because the reality is the first time you did it, what happened, and this is just my analogy, so not a diagnosis, but it's one where I say, you lost a little bit of trust in you. Just a little bit, just that one sheet, right? And as a consequence of losing a little bit of trust in you, no different to if you lost a little bit of trust in me. If I said, okay, I'm going to meet you at 10 o'clock and, 10 o'clock I don't show, you're going to lose a bit of trust in me. But if I did that again and then again, you're going to stop trusting me in that area. And then as my behavior escalates to the negative, you're going to trust me less and less and less. Well, with each step of that, what are the chances of your respect growing for me or reducing?
Right.
Right. So if you trust me a little bit less and you respect me a little bit less, do you think you would value me a little bit less as well? See less of my worth and have a harder obstacle to overcome to love me? And that's the journey we have with self.
Yeah.
Right. And the new relationship with the narcissist enforces that behavior, gaslights you to doubt your own perception of reality, love bombs you to continue the negative behavioral pattern, isolates you to create more need upon the substance, and around we go. Do we become trauma bonded, addicted to? It's interesting, isn't it?
It's so, man, I'm glad we're recording this. This is gold. Yeah, the way you're explaining this it's gold. And the thing that went through my head though, as I'm listening to you, you explain that just beautifully. And then what's also beautiful is then there's the reverse, right? So and then coming back from it, like what I explained to some of my clients is like just starting with one small thing that helps you, I guess, like build a track record, so to speak, of trust with yourself so that you can begin trusting yourself. But it starts just the same exact way. If you can go in the opposite direction of loving yourself and trusting, you can go in a direction that brings you closer to yourself, right? And that's that journey as well. Is just
and the journey up is difficult in the sense that you're now recognizing a new path. But guilt and shame doesn't leave you early. Right?
Oh, no. Yeah. No.
Detachment doesn't happen until it's deliberate. So we can suppress a lot of these grievances, the pain, the humiliation, the shame, the guilt, and so forth. But if we don't detach from it, we're just suppressing it. In other words, we're still carrying it.
Yeah.
So it becomes hence, like I saw one of your videos talking about, a PTSD response, and one of the ways I always try and spin things for people because I go, as soon as you believe you have something, regardless of it, you have it, right? Whatever you believe, I always say, if you believe you can or you can't, you are always right, right? Because you will manifest that as real in your world. So PTSD is one of those acronyms psychology has given to the fact that there's unresolved trauma. But if we word it as unresolved trauma versus something that you have to carry for the rest of your life, and I know there are technical nuances there, but when you refer to it as unresolved trauma, we then can look at it and go, well, what happens when I resolve that trauma?
Yeah, yeah. I feel strongly. I'm glad you brought this up. I feel strongly as well as far as just being mindful about labels that are used. I
100%.
think a lot of the time people will, and like you said, there's a lot of nuance, but to certain diagnosis, whether it's ADHD, bipolar, depression, whatever these things, but there's the things beyond that that just like you said, it can be so beneficial to focus on those things. That way you take power away from this identification.
Correct.
And yeah, and so I really hear you on that. I couldn't agree more. I think it's a really good perspective to bring up that yeah, I really would love to be more mindful of going forward.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So you've gone through this journey, and without doubt, one of the things that you tapped into was the character trait of courage to come out the other side. And it does take exactly that courage. It takes a lot more than that, but that is definitely one of the character traits that resonates with you, obviously, and that you leaned on to start pulling yourself out of this situation.
Mm-hmm.
How was
Yeah.
the journey for you, and what did it look like?
So the biggest, I guess, act of courage around the time that I hit bottom was deciding that I was going to one, it took a huge, I was literally doing step one of the 12 steps without even realizing it, which is just acknowledging, accepting, and surrendering, acknowledging I have a problem that I've lost, that I don't have power over. And then for me, it looked like surrendering to my higher power. And again, I didn't even realize what I was doing. There was no one that encouraged me to do this. That um, it wasn't because of a church or a religion or anything outside myself, other than I think me just being so desperate that I found that to be the only solution was to literally cry out for help and um, just beg for the strength to help me stay sober and to help me through, because at the time when the specific day that I'll never forget, this moment that I'll never forget, I was, my boyfriend at the time that I was living with was out of town, and I was currently withdrawing from alcohol, but also another substance called kratom that I had been abusing pretty severely, that I started to take for pain, but was abusing it to numb as well. And yeah. And then also was just smoking weed all the time, all the things. But so I was withdrawing as I'm just emotionally in so much pain, and physically I'm just laying on my floor and I'm just crying out and begging for help and saying, I can't do this. I can't do this on my own. And something really special happened in that moment. I went from feeling like I'm completely alone in the world to realizing that I have strength beyond this world, that to me in the form of angels. I
Yeah.
have my dad. I have an aunt that I lost before I was even born, that I've never met, that actually in that moment I felt the closest to. And then I have my grandma, who I was really close to.
Yeah.
And I went from, so much of my pain has stemmed from not having my dad, but also not having maternal nurture and support throughout life as well.
Yeah.
So I just desperately wanted to be nurtured in that moment. And I believe that I received that in the form of um, like the presence of angels. That's really what it felt like, and just God.
Yeah.
And then after that, so it was like an overwhelming sense of peace. Again, no one told me to do this. It was just like, it's funny to look back on, because now I do have a lot better idea of how powerful some of these exercises can be, to like sit in front of a mirror and talk to yourself the way I did. That's exactly what I did. I went in front of the mirror and I started talking to myself as if I was speaking to my inner child. And I just said, I'm never going to leave you. I'm always, you can do this. I'm always going to be here for you. I'm never going to leave you.
Yeah.
And that's what I needed to hear, I think. And it was that day forward that I've not only remained sober, but for whatever reason, I have not struggled with a alcohol craving, which was my what I struggled with the most.
Yep.
So it was alcoholism.
Yep.
I've not had a single. At times, does it sound fun? Especially if I'm like in settings where, like on the lake, my favorite place to have a drink or whatever. Sure, but it's not the kind of cravings that I know a lot of recovering addicts struggle with, to the point where it's like they really, got to get to a group ASAP or anything like that. I have just had so much just strength in that department, or like discipline.
Yep. And as far as your journey with alcohol and the labels we put on ourselves through that journey, what label do you put on yourself at the moment? Like, are you a recovering alcoholic? Are you a recovered alcoholic?
I like that. I like that.
Ex-alcoholic?
I like that question a lot, because I've had this conversation about so in Alcoholics Anonymous, they'll have you check in like as an alcoholic. And I think that's simply um just re-exercising step one over and over again. Maybe, I'm not totally sure, but I've battled with the concept. For me, I love the phrase that sort of resonates with me now is I'm celebrating recovery from. And I think I kind of adopted that from a program called Celebrate Recovery. And I like the way they put their spin on it, is it's a celebration. And I'm forever celebrating my recovery from. I think I don't know that I've thought too much about it, but I definitely don't. It's not something I'm identifying with often. If I do, it's very rarely that I think I've even, now that I think about it, that I identify that way. Maybe it helps. Maybe most of the time, if I do, it's to help just kind of explain what I struggled with, but yeah. I think, what I want to add to that really quick is, I remember making a video a while back, and something that really helped me in my recovery was kind of like, again, back to what we talked about before, was taking the power away from identifying that way. And it was like, how did I explain it in my video? Instead of, it was almost like what I explained is like taking away the negative connotation of it. And instead of like every day focusing on, I have a problem, I have to wake up and I have to stay sober and all this, it was switching your mindset and being like, I have freedom from whatever. I get to wake up and look forward to feeling free, and just looking at the positives and staying away from like these heavy, I don't know, identifiers and like the negativity that comes with that, but just continuing to stay in the space that's of light and like hope and being grateful. And it's not, I have to stay sober. I get to walk this journey towards freedom and healing.
Yeah.
I guess it's like, yeah, hopefully that made sense, but.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So just again, little slight detour, because it's kind of what I like to do.
Yeah, no worries.
You'll get used to it.
No worries.
So if I asked you the question, who am I? And when I say that, who are you? So if you ask yourself a 6-letter question, who am I? Right? And I said to you that I don't want you to tell me what you do, what you've done, what titles you've had, what titles you have, what relationships you have, what relationships you've had, right? I want all of that removed, right? Because they're just things that you do. How would you answer it?
I always have to close my eyes for these bigger questions so I can really like think in and connect.
Like, give me the double bird and go, screw you, that's too hard to answer.
No, not at all. I love it. I love your questions. This is a great one too. I think the first things that come to mind are more so like, I think of, I am compassion, I am light, I am love, I am messy, I am just a combination of all the things that make me human. Yeah, I am both light and dark. Those things come to mind.
Yeah.
I feel I am an energy. And when you really break it down, I have a soul, and all the things that make my soul unique is what I am. It's nothing that's material. It's nothing that's physical. It's not even the way I look.
So interesting that sobriety doesn't come into that thought process.
Mm. Oh, yeah, no, it didn't. No, it didn't because I'm so much more than, at least to me. And I didn't even realize. Yeah, I didn't even realize.
That's the point. It's like it's not
Yeah.
you, and you never would get there. You would never get there because it's an external influence that says, "Listen, you did shit in the past." It's like, well, I've done a lot of stuff in the past,
Hmm.
right? I actually went
Mm.
full and was a farrier by trade. So I used to shoe horses. I was a rodeo cowboy, right?
Mhm.
What? So what?
Yeah. Yeah, you are really speaking my language and connecting with my heart right now because that is so much of this, just that exercise, just what you've been able to shed light on is so, I feel so passionate about because I so badly want people to get to that place where no matter what kind of choices they've made, that that they are still worthy of love and they are still so much more than their past or all these like external circumstances and just choices and things, you know?
I look and go, there are three periods of time, supposedly, right? Apparently, there's a future. Apparently, there's a past. And I go, okay, can you take me to either of them?
Mm.
Answer's no. And it's like, okay. So effectively, we have words that describe things that happened in the past, and we call it the past. And the reason it's the past is because it no longer exists.
Mhm.
Your past no longer exists.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that
A story
I used,
can bring it into present.
mhm.
It's not, it's just a story.
Yeah.
Memory can bring it in, but it's just a memory.
Yes.
The past no longer exists. We are just trained to refer to it and bring it into the present. I'm like, why would you do that? Like, how do you
Hmm.
think you learn in this world? Like the process of learning takes you to here. Here's what's important.
Hmm.
At the moment, there is only I have a wife, I have children, I have businesses, I have friends, I have all of these things going on. Yet this conversation is the only thing in my world that matters right now
Mm.
because this is the
Yeah.
present. I'm here 100% present with you, and there is nothing else.
Hmm. Yeah. It just reminds me, it like when I was in treatment, I think one of the things so much of what I struggled with going there was not being present. Cause like I told you, it was go, go, go all the time.
Yeah.
And I, my mind was anywhere but the present. And what I got really good at in treatment was because it was like a time warp. Time was different in there. It was really crazy. It was such a cool experience. But like a week could feel like a year just because we were processing and doing so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe something happened like a week ago where maybe there was a situation between, just for example, a roommate, and it was sort of, I don't know, it was just I don't want to say like out of character, but just something that came up that was hard or not a way I like maybe responded in a way that I wasn't proud of, and then a week would go by, and and it was like I was already a completely different person. It felt like, or version of myself, I mean.
You know,
And
your
what,
intuition is so freaking strong.
huh?
Your intuition is so strong. You are intuitively saying things that you don't have words to put answers to, and you're just doing the best description possible. Keep going, but I'm just getting smashed by intuition right now.
Oh, well, I guess what I'm trying to say is it just reminds me that I remember having moments in treatment where some of the girls would bring up something that happened a week ago, and I'm like, I don't live there anymore. I mean, I'm already this completely different version of myself, and so it felt because I was really grasping what was happening in there. Like I was like a very diligent student, I guess you could say, but I really like took what they taught me and just that's kind of my personality and just ran with it and really applied it. And but I just it's really cool. Like I just there was just so much growth that happened for me personally, and I can just really relate to how it does feel when you're just stuck in the past and then getting to a place where you can free yourself of that. And then by the end of the program, it was crazy how sort of empty my mind was. It just wasn't a lot of thoughts. I was just so present that I wasn't anywhere else, just like you said, than where I was in the moment. And I didn't have all these, oh my gosh, intrusive thoughts and worry, fear of the future, shame from the past. And so I felt a lot better because we have our thoughts influence our feelings. And it's really cool to be able to get there. But yeah, it took a lot of work, and
Yeah.
yeah.
It's beautiful. It's interesting you say your thoughts influence, it sort of influences everything. And what I typically say is it stems from, more often than not, our thoughts stem from subconscious, as a rule, both conscious and subconscious belief systems. So we have conscious belief systems, and we have a lot of awareness around that particular belief. So for argument's sake, do you believe in God? Yes, I believe in God. Okay, I'm very conscious about that. Do you think the earth is round or flat? I'm very conscious about that. Or do you think this ball is pink? Yeah, okay. So I have very, very conscious belief systems. The issue is we have subconscious belief systems. Subconscious, in other words, they're sitting in a space. They're governing us just like conscious belief systems, except we have a very, very low, if any, level of awareness around them. Right? Yet they act identically to the conscious. And what we do is we develop a level of mastery living with that belief system. So if we demonstrate mastery, we'll have a look at it and we start not knowing what we don't know. And there was a time where you knew nothing about driving. And then you started knowing that driving happened, but you didn't really know much about it. Then you learned how to drive, but you had to pay conscious effort. Where probably today the only thing you don't think about when you're driving is driving.
Driving.
Which is a level
Oh,
of
that is
mastery,
good.
right?
That is good.
So we have these subconscious belief systems. And one may say that, as a consequence of your past, you're not as valuable as someone that hadn't experienced that. Right?
Yep.
And it's sitting in your subconscious. So your thoughts around anything are coming from the foundation that, you don't have as much right as the other person. You don't have the value, you don't have the worth, which then trigger into your decisions, which flow into your behaviors, which create your reality.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Trigger your emotions, which make you feel the way you feel, which usually emphasizes that belief system, proves that belief system right of your lack of worth, and around you go. But because they sit in your subconscious, it's like, what I feel like I'm on this constant spiral and I can't get off it. And it's like, we need to alter a belief system that sits in your subconscious. In other words, we need to go back reflectively, have a look at some of these significant events in your life and actually shift our perspective. We need to see them differently in order to shift our belief systems. Because once we can see them differently, in other words, you did OnlyFans, and there's a whole lot of things that can go around that, right? But if we shift our perspective and look back and go, okay, 3 things that you can be grateful for. In other words, let's go find the lessons, wisdom, knowledge, and experience that you've gained from that.
Yeah.
And you go, 3 things, I could write a book on it now, right? And you go, yeah. And you're going to see things very differently. I look at it and you go, well, I was an addict. And I look at it and I go, okay, when we started talking about identity, now we also spoke about mirror work and your belief in it. So let's take you back to that mirror. Let's stand you in front of that mirror, right? Let's modestly strip you down in front of that mirror and answer the question, what do I see? What do I see standing in front of me? And if we see a woman that once was, then we're not looking deep enough. That sits in the past. What do we really see to the woman that's now standing in front of me, right? Sitting in front of me on the other side of the world looking at me. Who do I see? Who do you, because it's irrelevant who I see, but even though I can share that, who do you see? And when we start really digging deep, you go, okay, I see a woman of courage.
Mm.
I see a woman of resilience. I see a woman of bravery. I see a woman of self-discipline, of consistency, of truthfulness, of trustworthiness, of loyalty, of love, of commitment, compassion, of empathy. That's the woman I see in front of me.
Mhm.
So then we go back to the origin and we go, I made a decision there. And then bit by bit and bit, I lost myself.
Mhm.
And if we reframe that and we look at things and go, in life, we have values, things that we value, right? So let's just assume we value truthfulness. We then look at it
Yep.
and say, I have character traits. Now, I have the character trait of truthfulness. So what is difference between the value of truthfulness and the character trait of truthfulness? And
Mhm.
the answer to that is one, I value, which is like words. I value
Mhm.
truthfulness. One is who I fundamentally am.
Yeah, one you're embodying, the other is like it's an outside.
Correct. So if we look at
Yeah.
most abusive people, well, they too value truthfulness from you, but they don't have the
Mhm.
character trait of truthfulness. They value compassion, yet they don't have the character trait of compassion.
Mhm.
So we start having a look at it, and in your journey, what really happened to hit rock bottom was you got to a certain element of alignment, out of alignment with your character to what you value.
Who I really am. Yeah.
Because you bit by bit, you're turning your back on things that you value, even though your character was there,
Hmm. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Then to turn it round, well, you had these character traits. And it was the reliance on the character traits and the recognition of those character traits and the leaning into those character traits that drove you out.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that will take you through the rest of your life.
Yep. Yeah, it's so funny because so much of what I valued while doing OnlyFans, I mean, had to be the money because
Yep.
I was abandoning so much, right? And then it's like now I'm in this place and I'm so grateful to have had that experience because how much I value love and connection and health, which is far more than money.
Yeah.
And just seeing that perspective change or like just really like getting back in alignment with the things that actually bring me happiness because that didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't matter how much money I made. I was making the most money I've ever made and yet the most depressed
Yeah.
or just struggling,
Yeah.
and I'm grateful. So that's one massive lesson and like wisdom that I've gained from that, like you said. And I'm glad that you brought up OnlyFans because as you were talking about this, yeah, it's something that's happened in my past, but it's very easy to sneak its way into my subconscious and telling myself I'm not worthy of certain things because I have done that
Yeah.
and that reflecting in reality. And I just love listening to you, speak on that because you're right about that. I mean, I know that that doesn't say anything about who I am today, who I am, and what I deserve and my worth and all these things. But it's a thing that I have to constantly, that I have to work on. But the fact that I can sit here and have a conversation about it is in, it is day and night compared to when I first shared, it took me, I don't know how long in treatment to even start talking about it. And when I did finally say the words, it was like a whisper.
Yeah.
And it's just funny to think back on. I couldn't even say the words OnlyFans. And then today I do all kinds of support groups. But one of the support groups that I completed took a little over a year. And I met with like maybe 15 women every single week. And we talked about everything. And it was a group to come and just heal alongside each other and work through whatever hurts, habits, hangups. And it was through that group as well that I found the courage to delete OnlyFans, but also where I shared in a church that I had OnlyFans and I actively had OnlyFans yeah, for the majority of that group. But how much progress, and then the more I'm able to just own it,
Yeah.
and I feel like I strip the power away from that to the shame, I guess. Like
Yeah.
I am able to face that shame And then also the fact that I'm able to share it and all those women continue to love me is so healing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But beyond that, there's still going to be people, I'm sure, that I meet. I mean, who knows? I'm pretty careful about who I share things, not careful who I share things with, but about, I mean, to an extent, with personal information like that. I mean, I'll share online all day long, but I can't control how people are going to respond to me, right?
No.
I was just going to say, I'm sure I'll meet someone eventually, and maybe I actually accidentally share with the wrong person, and maybe they choose to respond in a way that doesn't feel great. And I think that's where really am understanding that my value isn't any less because of that is gonna come in, and just trying to remember that. It doesn't mean that I'm not human. It's not going to affect me,
100%.
but
100%.
just knowing.
Isn't it interesting? We can definitely get to a place where it won't affect you, right?
Yeah, I'd like to be there.
Yeah. And I can help you with that. But it's one of those things. Here's something really interesting. Let's just assume that I am the Mother Teresa of all men. And I've been the Mother Teresa of all men for the last 52 years, right? Perfect. I am the thorough gentleman, never even raised my voice in an argument to a woman, right?
Mm.
And today I go home and beat my wife, go and cheat on her and gaslight her, right? Why not? Right? Because it was all her fault that all that happened, right? 52 years of being an incredible human being. And in one day, what do I become? Right? So when it's on the negative side, you recognize that the 52 years prior mean nothing. So what you did in your past, today you choose to be a good human, right?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? That's it.
Yeah. It's funny how, and I think this can be applied in a lot of like different circumstances, is how we hyper focus, especially me. And I know this about myself. I can be very hard on myself, and we tend to hyper focus. Well, I do hyper focus on the things we do wrong. And I constantly have to remind myself to celebrate the wins, because they can just get buried underneath maybe the one thing that I felt like I did wrong.
Yeah.
And it just reminds me, like what you were saying, it just that our choices don't define us entirely, and it's back to just like our past. And when he had 52, like you were saying, like 52 amazing years, that just goes out the window. That's kind of what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Well,
over
all of a sudden,
one day.
if I become a bad man, right? I'm now bad in one day,
Okay.
right? In one day, I went from 52 years of good, and I've chosen now to be a bad human,
I see.
right?
Yeah.
So now I'm a bad, right?
Oh,
And
I
it's
see.
like,
Yeah.
you've made choices in the past, right? And it's kind of like you've changed that, right? And you look at it, you go, you made choices as a free woman, and other than certain relationships and those sorts of things, you've hurt no one along the way, right? And you look and you go, I've looked at it and gone, that doesn't line up with my values. I went down a path, right? And the difference between you and me is you're sharing the thing that you're embarrassed of or ashamed of, or a negative thing from the past, right? And everyone else is going, oh no, I'm perfect. I've never made a mistake in my life.
Oh.
Right. I'm going to sit on I'm going to judge you because you just don't know the dumb decisions I've made, right? And yet they all lie. Most people that are listening to this lie to themselves every single day. Right.
Yes, you're reminding me. So what comes up for me often that helps give me perspective is everybody sins, right? Everybody sins. And the only difference is my sin is very public.
Correct.
But there is no difference. I don't believe that any sin is better or worse.
It was a filter, right? What a beautiful filter for any future relationship.
To see it that way, you mean?
It's a beautiful filter. I think it's a remarkable filter.
Yeah.
You have the ability to go, dude, can you handle that? Because if you can't, you are not a high value man, and you will never stand up to a high value woman.
Yeah, exactly.
Just reframe it. You go, like, the only man, I can't change my past. You can't change your past. It is what it is. And you have this incredible filter to say the only man I'm going to be with is a man that judges me on the woman I am today. And if you can't do that, fuck off.
Yeah.
Simple. Fuck off. Right? You can't stand behind a woman like me. Go run behind your insecurities, because it's all the stories that they're going to tell you. Right?
Yeah, and it's also for me, I've just, truth is such a big value to me. And I think I already realized that the kind of guy that wouldn't support me in living in truth and support this journey. And it's not, yeah, because I'm very public as well with like, it's not just that I did OnlyFans. I also talk about it because I want to help other people. I want to, yeah, exactly. And so, and it's, so that's another big thing. It's like, I don't want to be with someone who doesn't have that kind of mindset. I want to also show up for someone and be able to hold space for them to be loved through things that maybe they thought they could never be loved through
100%.
or accepted for. And I have so much compassion in like that specific area of being able to prove to people that they can do things that they may have thought like no one could accept or love them through, and actually meet them with love, because I know
of the
I
world
know
that we tell ourselves.
and yeah, and that's the majority of it is whatever, I don't know if you want to call it Satan or like I don't know what else to like reference it to, but whatever that like force or that like, but maybe gets in our head and just feeds us. Yeah. Okay. I didn't know for people who whatever don't believe, but that's
listen,
how
I am a Christian man. I'm unapologetic about it being a Christian man. And if people can't handle that back, well, you know what they can do, right?
Yeah. So then that's and he is so good. His favorite tactics are fear and shame, and he'll just can get in your head and so people carry these secrets and they're alone with these secrets and they can't, and it's just,
yeah.
And they have to care, because I've been that person. And so I know how heavy it is. And I know how to like just carry that shame and become sick from it, really. So for like so many years, about more than just, other things too, like beyond OnlyFans. And then to be again, back to like that group of women that I had, and to say some of those things out loud and then be met with love. Oh, oh my gosh, all that time I spent feeling horrible about myself.
Yeah.
So I love like, and especially with someone I'm seeing romantically, to be able to get to love someone, love those darker parts, or love them regardless of their past. That's like a gift. You're like a huge gift to give someone.
It's one where I try and take it to the next step, right? I just want to love someone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, I don't need to say because of their past, because we all have one. It's irrelevant, right?
Mm-hmm.
It has zero relevance in the person I'm with today, because today we are our lessons, wisdom, knowledge, and experience. How we got here, we've all got different journeys to how we got to today, right?
Yeah.
So I want someone that just loves me, because, in a decade, I'm probably going to be a different person again.
Yeah.
Right. and do I want my wife to say, even despite your past, Jamie, it's kind of like I'm a reflection of every step I've ever taken in my entire world. And if there is a person out there that wants to judge all of these things, you go focus on the enemy, you go waste your time, just get the fuck out of my life. Right? The difference between guilt and shame is significant, right? And I choose not to have shame, right? Guilt is kind of like, listen, I borrowed your lawnmower and I broke it, I'm so sorry, right?
Yeah.
Versus shame, where is I am broken.
Yeah.
Right? And simply by referring to your past, says that you're holding on to negativity. There's an element of it sitting there that is saying, I am not worthy because of, or I am less worthy because of, or I am not as perfect because of, or I am not necessarily lovable to this level because of. And you go, none of that is true. None of it is true. And to be in relationship, whether it's an intimate relationship, a work colleague, a friend, be here, be present, or don't be here at all. Simple.
Yeah.
Right. And it is that practice of, we go back to that period of time in hospital when you said there was nothingness. And you go, that's the presence. That is being in the present because, well, there's only this. It's when we step out of
Mhm.
that that's the issue. And we can,
Yeah.
society will say, okay, I want to drag you back to the past. And you can go, you can want me to do a whole host of things. I choose not to. I look forward,
Mm.
right? And it's interesting. I break down the words I love you because I think so many people say things and they really don't think about it. They're not mindful about it, right? And it's kind of like in other words, the person saying it is the reference point, love. Let's just assume, even though we never are, but let's just assume we're on the same page when it comes to love, right? You, you, not you, but.
Mhm.
Well, you are everything you've
Mm.
experienced, all the characters, you, full stop. As soon as
Yeah.
you put a but there, rack off.
Mm.
That's
Yeah.
what I think.
So
Yeah.
no, go ahead. Go ahead. I want you to complete your thoughts on this.
It's one where I say, love both sides of the things you admire most. Love the other side of that. Love the fact that I'm truthful, but sometimes that truth might hurt. No, I don't like that green dress, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Sometimes truth. No, I really didn't appreciate the way you spoke to me.
Mm.
That's just truthfulness, but you want truthfulness in the relationship, right?
Mhm.
Well, it's not conditional with me,
Mm.
right? You want a man of integrity? Well, it's here and it's here. Oh, yeah, but I want to be able to, I don't always do the shit I say I'm going to do. I do,
Mm.
right? People love the fact that I'm so motivated and driven and I don't seem to stop. And I'm like, no, I don't stop. So if you're going to be in my world, you're going to have to handle a person that's
Mhm.
ADHD as hell and he doesn't stop.
Mm.
Right? That's
Yes.
the other side of me,
Mhm.
right? And it's all the things you love and admire the most. On the flip side of nearly all of those, we talked about it. You're a beautiful woman, So then the man's going to be attracted to your beauty as one aspect, but then he has to be able to handle the fact that you're a beautiful woman when you go out in public, because
Mhm.
your beauty isn't just seen by one person in the world.
Mhm.
Like my wife will get ready to go out, and I'll be like, no, 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 don't wear those boots. Wear those boots. She's like, why? They're hotter.
Mm.
Why? Because I want her to feel desirable. I want her to feel sexy. I want her to feel good. A woman that goes out feeling
Mm.
like that, she's coming home.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really receiving this at a unique time because I want to share this with you. So it was just Sunday night that me and my partner broke up.
Right.
And so as I'm listening to you, it's like there's just so, you're shedding light on a lot of different things. And oh, I just really missed the target on this and that and whatever. And then also like understanding, yeah, how different it may have felt to be with someone that's encourages for me to feel good in my skin and to embrace that aspect of me that I am beautiful a
Yeah.
bit more, and it's just hard because it logically can make sense to a lot of people, but then actually embodying some of that, and then it just goes back to things sort of leaking into the present moment that are subconscious and dictate how we respond or behave, and it's so
100%.
and it's a lot of that comes up in relationships, and it's such a powerful time to be able to like learn more about ourselves, and it's also very difficult.
Yeah. It's I always say dating. Firstly, I want to acknowledge, your courage again, bravery, resilience, truthfulness to share that story. I want to obviously give you some space and so forth and say that, I'm sorry for your loss as much as I celebrate your freedom from what it sounds and pay respect to the fact that these are hard times in the early stages and so forth. And without doubt, after this, I'd love to just give you a few things to go away with to, help empower you through this journey. But it's one of those things where dating, being in relationship is to get to know, right?
Mm.
And so long as we stay true to that, it's like it weeds out who's not meant to be there.
Mhm.
Because you want to get to know me? Great. This is me. For those that can't hear, it's the double birds. This is me, and I'm unapologetic about it. This is my journey and story, and I'm unapologetic about it because this has made this amazing human here. Can you handle it? You can't handle it? Shoot, fly. Serious.
Yeah.
Serious.
Yeah.
And here's the reality. I'll tell you about a superhuman, right? A superhuman is someone that's able to look in that mirror and go, I don't like what I see, and I'm going to do something about it. Then
Hmm.
does something about it, accepts it, doesn't hide behind it, spins their life around, faces all these things, right? And makes something better of themselves.
Hmm.
Mary Poppins has a very, very boring story to tell. And in life, I wouldn't choose her as a partner because when things get tough, she's not going to be present, nor is she going to be useful, and life is going to throw me challenges. You come across a woman like you, I'm going to trip over you because you're probably going to be in front of me in the trenches. It's like I said,
Yeah.
I've got this, and you're like, stand back, there's only 20 of them.
There's only, that was a very accurate representation of probably how it feels to be with me. Yeah. Yeah. I find that I struggle with a bit is wondering how far I've come and like all that I've learned during this journey and holding myself, just always wanting to better myself. And I just wonder, and I know there's so much that I know this parts of this stem from that are come from something completely different. But if I'm placing harsh expectations on others because I myself place harsh expectations maybe on myself.
So here's your next
And
situation, right? We'll look in the mirror and we're going to say, I will never play small for anyone ever again.
hmm, is that so like as I'm sharing that, because that gives me perspective I didn't see at all. That's kind of what you're hearing.
Yeah. What you're saying is like you're recognizing the journey you're on and you're grappling with alignment to the reality that you're a high value woman. Self worth is not
Mhm.
your opinion, self worth is your action.
Mhm.
So when our self worth is diminished because we are carrying sins of the past and judging ourselves because we have been groomed to be our own abuser,
Mhm.
then we see ourselves as less than, and then like attracts like.
Yeah.
And you are recognizing that that's not working for you, and you're still in that space of fully owning that you're an incredible human being and detaching from the past. There's still
Yeah.
elements that you're holding on to that says, I did this, right? And this was bad. Says who? Why was that
Yeah.
bad? I interviewed another woman on this podcast who is in the adult entertainment industry. She does hard kink,
Mhm.
right? And loves it. She has no
Mhm.
trauma of the past. There's not this story that got her into pornography, right? She's an exhibitionist. She is highly educated. She has a beautiful singing voice and chooses to do this. So who says it's bad?
Mhm.
This is her choice. She owns it. It's her body. Everything is done with consent. She is an adult. And screw you if you're going to think you're going to judge me.
Yeah.
Where that didn't line up with your character and your values, and you have chosen to take a different direction.
Yeah. And that's what exactly.
And that's life. You've learnt along the way. Do I want a woman, in my world that can make bad decisions, yet recognize that they're not in alignment with her character, and now she has learnt that lesson, right? So
Yeah.
mistakes are going to be less and less and less, but still going to be there because you're human,
Yeah.
right? And one that can actually have the resilience and courage and determination and honesty to spin her life around. I will take that any day of the week because I can come
Yeah.
up to you and go, Chantel, you hurt me. This wasn't right. And you're going to look at it and go, no, you're right. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Or you're going to hold your ground if you were. Either way, it's going to be for the benefit of the relationship. That's a partnership.
Mhm. Yeah.
Never
I
all for anyone to satisfy their weak, fragile ego. You
I
can't
think
handle my greatness? Fuck off.
the one of the things I mean I say all the time is my favorite kind of people are people who have overcome addictions or been through really hard times because they're the ones that have acquired these amazing just all this wisdom but also have these characteristics that are incredible that are what you need to overcome really hard times, right? So like what you're
100%.
saying.
And they have
Yeah.
a reference point, right? People that haven't done this don't have a reference point. So they have to make an assumption on no knowledge, no reference point, no life experience as to what you would have had to go through to make these decisions, to do these things,
Yes.
and to do these things. So they have no reference.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, but if you said to them, okay, well, why did you stay in that relationship for 10 years that was abusive? Well, anyone that's been in an abusive relationship goes, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Anyone that doesn't says, well, why didn't you just leave? And it's the dumbest question ever, right? Because people don't have reference points. So when anyone says that, I just see that you don't have a reference point. Okay, you don't get it, right? Life hasn't given you these sorts of experience. You don't get what I get. You don't see what I see, and I can respect that.
Yeah.
It's a can of worms.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it just reminds me, I think it goes hand in hand with so much of what I had to learn as far as like when you're in the very beginning stage of like talking about things you've never talked about before, is like understanding that whoever you might be sharing with, do they even have the ability to understand or empathize? Because it's like, I use this, it's kind of a silly analogy, but like, no, if you're not a paraplegic, you can never understand what it's like to not be able to walk.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think what came up for me too, that I think is important and that I really like that you shared, is the other guest that you had and how she's able to work in the industry and feel great about it. And I love that. I love that perspective, and just like wanting to go a step further with that is that it's really not a matter of wrong and right when not just like being in the sex industry, but with anything, it's as long as you're not hurting yourself or others, is it in alignment with you or out of alignment? And so when I share my story, and I hope to reach maybe other girls in the OnlyFans industry who can relate, I want to reach the girls who are unhappy doing it, but don't have the just being afraid. Right. But then there's this other side to it, that there are people that can do certain things, not just that just because society has had whatever perspective they've had doesn't mean that it's accurate.
Correct.
That it's really just comes down to what feels right for you.
Correct. 100%.
I like that.
You start looking at that and you go, the very simple analogy, without going too deep and too far and stretching this, is let's just look at culture. What is culturally acceptable in one country is defamation in another.
We could go a long way with this one, but it's like, because what I don't even find culturally acceptable that so many people do is simply buying processed foods off the shelf at a grocery store.
There you go.
It's insanity to me that we're being fed poison, but it's just normal. It's normalized. So it's can be applied in so many different
but it's one
circumstances.
Of those things where I look at it and go, there is zero need for justification, for excuse, for reason, for any of it, right? Because you are perfectly imperfect, just as you are, with everything that you've been through, done, shared, experienced, right? You went down a path in your particular life based on a whole lot of circumstances that you've only shared a tiny percentage with us today, because I know there's a backlog of other story. And you separated from self as a consequence of the decisions that you made, and got to a point where you said, this is killing me. This is no longer working for me. This no longer serves me. In fact, it may never have. And I am woman enough and strong enough and courageous enough and resilient enough and brave enough and truthful enough to accept that, to create the shift in my life, to then turn it around and now not go hide in the shadows, but to use that journey at your own peril to help others. What a beautiful story. What a beautiful journey. What a beautiful human being. And it's a privilege to share this time with you.
Thank you so much, Jamie. Yes, likewise. It's been such a privilege. And I am going to be walking away with so much. I'm just so much to think about. And thank you for just pouring into me.
Oh, you're so welcome.
In a really beautiful way.
Yeah. Thank you for your vulnerability and for sharing, because I promise you this will touch a lot of people.
You're welcome. I'm glad that I can.
I love it. I love it.